All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Here's Johnny.
Vanity. Definitely my favorite sin.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
The power of Christ compels you.
This is my boomstick.
What's your favorite scary movie?
What up, horrorheads, and welcome to Shiver, a horror movie podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Daniel DeBona.
And I'm David Ulloa.
And this week, we have a movie that honestly, we just can't believe that not only have we not gotten to this movie yet, but that this is an untapped goldmine of horror that we have yet to really approach. So we were looking at the calendar after we recorded our last episode, trying to figure out what we were going to do, and happened to notice that Peter Dinklage's birthday was last week, which led us to remember that Peter Dinklage is in the new Toxic Avenger, and it was a light bulb moment when we realized we have not reviewed a single Troma film on this
is on us
yet. Yeah, this is absolutely on us. So not only are we opening up this week with the Toxic Avenger, but we're going to consider this the official kickoff of Troma Summer, because we are just now getting to pressing record because we just spent 20 minutes looking down a list of Troma films and having fun coming up with possible ideas for future episodes. So the Toxic Avenger, the original from 1984, is on the block here. I mean, Dave, what is your, it's from the 80s. It's a Troma film. So not just your initial kind of thoughts on it, but what is your kind of story with Troma and with Toxie?
So my relationship with Toxie is really more through the animated TV show than it is with the movies. So I don't know that I've ever seen any of the sequels. I do know that I have seen the Toxic Avenger because I remember renting it at Blockbuster. But this was so long ago that I remembered just about nothing. Like, I can't remember what I had for breakfast. I cannot be expected to remember a movie that I rented once at Blockbuster in the early 90s. So I remember really enjoying it. I'm pretty sure that it was the TV show, the animated show, that drew me to the movie. And I always liked Toxie. Like there was this this kind of craze in the 80s and 90s with pollution.
Yes.
And there was this push to be cleaner, right? To recycle, to
we had a
take
whole
care
lot
of these...
successful cartoon franchise.
Absolutely. And we're not talking about the Toxic Avenger, of course. We're talking about Captain Planet. Right. So it was really big, and especially if you're around Daniel and my age, this was an integral part of our childhood. Was like, we are the custodians of our planet, and it is up to us to take care of this thing. So Toxie, as a victim of the sort of toxic pollution that can be produced by us, that was something that I think the animated show kind of nailed home much better than the movie does. But again, I don't think that's part of what the movie's doing at all. I don't think there's any sort of lofty ideals that Kaufman had in mind with this thing. I think he just wanted to do a good fucking movie. And I'll tell you what, I was telling Daniel, I saw this in a hospital ER room, and it was still a load of fun. With my discomfort.
Yeah, so this movie, it's interesting. You're talking about, this might as well have been your first time seeing it. Me too, but for different reasons. So when I was about 21 and I was into horror, I had a friend who's lived in an apartment complex, and the guys that lived below them, they were like really into like just ridiculous comedic splatter gore style horror. And so it was one of those things where they were always, like that was the first time I saw like Killer Weed and stuff like that, just like those ridiculous 70s and 80s horror films like this one. The problem is, it was never a situation where we were in a clear state of mind and we then watched The Toxic Avenger. So while I am aware of the fact that before watching this last week for this episode, I've seen The Toxic Avenger, all I really remembered about it was Toxie and there was a blind girl. Like that was it. I did not remember exactly what his origin story was. So it was basically a first watch for me. And this movie is so fascinating in what it is, right? Because you're right. There's that idea of these corrupt politicians and pollution and all this, but it's also just one of those films that we talk about every once in a while that just reminds you that some people just like to have fun when they're making. Some people just, this isn't, not everything has to be Sinners or Hereditary, and not shitting on those movies at all. We have sung Hereditary praises, and at some point, I'm sure we will about Sinners. But not every horror movie has to be that. And that is what Troma is a constant reminder of. And so sitting down and watching this one, I mean, from the early days of Troma, as we were looking through that list, we didn't find many that predated this in 1984. So it was just kind of, it was this weird thing that became the swell of support that got behind Troma and this idea that you can just make something ridiculous and never attempt to make it make any sense. Just have fun with it and fill it with the most absurd characters and great boobs. Right? Like that's, I mean, we've used that quote on here before, it's so many minutes before you got to be killing somebody or showing boobs. And this movie, I mean, you could set your clock by it. It's like, it's been 2.5 minutes since I've seen any boobs or someone die. Here it comes. And sure enough, there it is.
There it is.
Right. And so it's fun. And what's even more bizarre about this is, while there is an absurd amount of nudity and the movie is The Toxic Avenger, this might sound weird to say, the nudity is never like super gross, right? Like it's funny nudity, which I feel like, nowadays we only get if Jason Segel wants to wave his dick in my face. Like I like just a girl being topless because it's funny in the moment is a lost art. Here in the Me Too era. And so it's interesting to see because it's never graphic. Like, yes, we see people having sex, sure, but it is like the most PG-13 sex, except for the fact that she's topless. It's funny nudity, which is just an interesting thing to go back and be like, oh yeah, that used to be commonplace. Like naked women just running by for no reason used to just be a sight gag. And so it was fun to kind of go back to that. Also, just one more thing, super glad that I decided at the last minute to not let my 14-year-old son watch this one because I debated it. I was like, I don't remember. Like, I think there's a couple boobs, but he's 14. No, very glad we had him sit this one out.
Yeah, I do want to talk about the nudity thing for a second because, look, we need to respect all people.
Correct.
Putting that out there. All right. But sometimes, a boob is just a boob.
It's just a boob.
And sometimes a dick's just a dick. All right. Shit. What was the one that I was watching recently? I was talking to you about Slaughter High. That's the one. That's the one. All right. And it starts off with a prank on a student, and here he is with his wang out.
Nice.
Guys, it was fucking hysterical. Okay? It's okay to just not take nudity seriously sometimes.
Exactly. And that's the thing, nobody was getting sexually assaulted in this movie. It wasn't used as a gross plot device.
Consent was always involved here.
It was just used because it was interesting and it added to it either being funny or fun to watch. And yeah, that's okay, right? So like I said, and I mean, we've reached the point now where, yeah, like I said, like every time I turn around, it's like, oh, look, that, like I keep saying Jason Segel, but that's because I think I've seen his penis as much as I've seen mine, I feel like the dude just loves having it out, which good for you, dude. Sling that thing. But like, you know, boobs, we can still show boobs and it be funny too, and it not be, you know, like American Pie creepy where we're spying on somebody or whatever. Like we can still do it. And Troma was a nice reminder of that.
Yes, it absolutely was. So before we get ourselves in trouble continuing to just talk about nudity, let's move on to the Toxic Avenger itself, right? And its story. So in a section that we're calling Make It Gross, Not Classy, which I think there's no better title for this section. This is a simple movie with a very simple premise, and I really don't understand how anyone can have an issue with this. So I'm just going to put that out there right at the top. All right. Daniel, how does this story work for you?
This story works exactly as well as it's supposed to. Right? I mean, it serves its purpose. There's a clear and defined character arc there for Toxie. We watched bad people get what's coming to, you know, like this. It's just kind of a textbook, like 5-paragraph essay of a movie, right? We open up.
Oh my God, that's perfect. It's a 5-paragraph essay of a movie. God damn, that's perfect. Thank you, guys. This has been Shiver. Fright you very much.
Appreciate you. It's we open up, we're immediately kind of introduced to like this super weird town, and we automatically realize, okay, no town like this exists, no people like this exist at no point for the next 82 minutes. I say that again, 82 minutes. Not trying to set any records here. 82 minutes, just barely over an hour. In the next 82 minutes, I'm not supposed to take anything seriously. We're introduced to characters named Slug and Bozo, right? And we get this skinny, just ridiculous, nerdy looking dude who is the janitor of a health club, like a spa. You know, they got workout rooms and pools and all this. And even though he's not doing anything except for his job, often poorly, the jocks hate him. And so they set him up to the only non-consensual thing in this movie, which is pranking him into kissing a sheep. And he's so embarrassed and so disgusted because everybody's seen this. He flings himself out a second-story window, landing headfirst in a barrel of toxic waste. And so is born the Toxic Avenger. We then get a revenge-style movie, but he's also just, you know, cleaning up the streets. There's Punisher vibes to it, you know, like he's gonna do whatever it takes.
I got Death Wish vibes.
Yeah, Death Wish is better. You're right. Death Wish is a better comparison.
Like if you like the first Death Wish, I think is a serious movie. Hard to take it serious when Charles Bronson is involved because of who Charles Bronson became.
Right.
But parts 2 through 5 were very much schlock fests. And I think that's kind of where this was going, right? It was, you know, down that oh my God, what was the name of that company? Was it? No, it wasn't Carolco. Cannon Films. Cannon Films, which I think is kind of like the Troma of action.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Cannon Films. Yeah, it was a Paramount movie. Damn, Herbie Hancock did the music for Death Wish. Anyway, so that's
the first.
Yeah. Okay. So side story there. But anyway, so as the movie continues, we see that he decides to not just use his powers for revenge, but he's a janitor at heart, right? That's what he is, and he's going to clean up the streets. And we then proceed to be introduced to the most insane group of villains that have ever existed. And he takes them all out one by one while falling in love with the blind girl until the National Guard is called in and quite literally points a tank at him. It's It sounds like a lot, and it is, and they cram it at 82 minutes, and it works. It's fun, it's gross, it's hilarious, and it's got some great special effects. There's really not a lot of negative things to say about this movie, down to the fact that we mentioned earlier that there is always consent involved. The one time someone almost gets assaulted, Toxie fucking takes him to task, belt to ass, and handles the guy. And so, another strong message, anti-assault, right? So it checks every single box that you want to see in a movie like this. After seeing it with a clear mind, and at 42 years old, I understand why this thing became this cult phenomenon, where there are people with these elaborate Toxie costumes that go to conventions, because it attracts that type of person. Because the other thing is, this isn't the type of movie that I'm just going to sit down and show to anybody, right? Because even though it is just fun, you have to be able to revel in the absurdity of it all to have fun. And there are some people who just don't get it, so they're not going to enjoy a movie like The Toxic Avenger. But as I watch through and I see this story, man, I just see it, like I said, just check. Yep, there it is. Okay, here we go. Oh, met a girl. Oh, she's blind. That makes sense because he's deformed. It's everything you think it's gonna be. And the only, like I said, the only point anything unpredictable happens is when the National Guard literally rolls into Tromaville to deal with one guy. Which, by the way, seems less unlikely after the events of the past week. So, I mean,
I was gonna fucking say, you took the words out of my mouth, man. We're living in times when corrupt politicians can just willy-nilly decide, you know what? I'm going to send in the National Guard, but you don't control the National Guard. Well, fuck you and the horse you rode in on. What the fuck? Right? And I'm watching this movie as they're scanning my balls at the hospital, right? And forgot we were live on air for a second.
Yeah.
I thought I had an issue. I don't have an issue, thankfully. At least not that issue. Anyway, I'm watching this thing and I'm like, this movie's a documentary. What times are we living in when Lloyd Kaufman can predict the future?
Yes.
Right? Because in all of what you said, which was 100% accurate, you left out one incredible side story, which is the political corruption that's happening throughout all of Tromaville, right? So here's this mayor who, for no reason that I can understand, because in literally every other way, he seems to be the most competent person in the room always.
Right.
Here's this mayor who is like just evil because politicians bad. I'm on board. You don't have to sell me on politicians being evil. I'm in. But the whole plot of Toxie taking down this crime, and the crime being connected to politicians wanting the city to be riddled with crime so that they can make money and have more power. I was like, well, shit, man. Like, I'm fucking on board with this, because you're in 82 minutes, you managed to say just enough about society where I'm like, oh, hey, they said something. You managed to show just enough nudity so that I'm like, oh, hey, look, a boob. You manage to show just enough gore where I'm like, oh, fuck, look, an eyeball. There's so much awesome shit in this movie. You simply have to be in it for the ride.
Yeah.
You cannot watch this movie as if you're going to sit down. Like, under our names here, if you're watching live, right? Under our names on the screen, it says, for Daniel, Professor of Occult Studies, and fuck if he hasn't earned that shit, right? And For me, it says professor of literary and critical analyses. If I were to attempt to analyze this movie, I would be as big a boob as the boobs that were on screen. There is nothing to this movie. Like, there is a premise. It is a solid premise. That premise is explored by murdering bad guys. This is what Dick Tracy and Batman and the Flash and all of these superheroes and crime busters that we all fell in love with when we were kids. This is the natural progression of this. This is just vigilanteism with a little bit more humor, a little bit more blood, and a little bit more sex. And I liked it when Tim Burton did it. I liked it when Warren Beatty did it. And I don't know that Tim Burton and Warren Beatty don't owe just a little bit of gratitude to Lloyd Kaufman.
Yeah, you're right. Like, this is surface level. Like, there have been times when I've been like, I don't know if there's anything deeper, and then you've managed to be like, here it is. I'm like, oh shit, missed that. That's awesome. There's nothing to miss here. There's absolutely nothing to miss here. Like, this thing, there is no forest for the trees. There are just the trees, right? And that's okay. And that's fine. Like I said, not everything has got to be an A24 think piece. Again, not shitting on them. We love them, but sometimes it's okay to turn your brain off and just watch one of these things. And so as you watch this movie, what's one of the things that's absolutely kind of hilarious in this is so the place is called Tromaville. It's the toxic waste capital of the world, right? They're proud of that. Their mayor is actively working on getting more toxic waste. And so you can, if there's one thing deeper, it's like, well, maybe that's why these people are just so fucking bizarre, right? Like, you've got, you've got these meatheads that all they do is work out, bang their girlfriends, and run people over with their car. Those are the three aspects of their life. They're either working out, having sex with their girlfriends, or they're getting drunk in a car with their girlfriends and running people over, and doing it in broad daylight while keeping score on the side of their car. There's no analysis there. They're just bad people. Like, they have no redeeming qualities. And, you get, God, man, the scene when the taco place gets held up, and you've got what seem to be some of the only normal people in Tromaville, all eating in this taco place. You've got the cook who's just drunk and is making tacos, whatever. But then, speaking of Captain Planet, like a Captain Planet style of bad guys storm in to this taco restaurant and decide, to rob everybody. And the one guy's like, his face is half painted and he's wearing the red, like, Speedo, like, what's the Sean Connery film?
Oh my God, Zardoz.
Yes, he's wearing like the Zardoz trunks, right? Like, he's just got a shotgun, and he looks like the Jack of Spades from what is it? That's X-Men or Spider-Man or something like that, right? Like, he looks like a comic book villain. And then you've got a guy who is using just like Mel Brooks level jive talking, like, as like his whole gimmick, right? Like, his whole entire personality is sounding like the blackest possible criminal that he can with the way that he's speaking. And that is, I mean, that's just what they were trying to do with it. And so like I said, everybody's just so bizarre that when you do get a scene like that and you see, it's like, oh, these are just people with their kids eating tacos. Those exist in Tromaville? I thought everybody was a super weird and shitty individual.
You're only super weird and shitty if there are normal people to compare you to.
True.
And I think you need a scene like that for that reason, which is why, like, you need the drunk short order cook. You need that guy, because for those of us that have worked in the food industry, right?
We've all known and or been that line cook.
Alcoholism like runs rampant. Alcohol and drugs, like it's what gets you through the weeds, man. Like there's no getting out of them otherwise.
Yeah.
So you need that guy. I fucking love when Toxie comes through and he takes a look at his bottle and he just takes another swig and he's like, well, this is a pit stop on the way to where I'm going. When I get there, that guy ain't gonna be here. I love that scene. I absolutely love that scene because that scene has been done to death. I mean, you don't even need a horror / action movie. I mean, Coming to America did this scene.
Right.
And this may be the best version of this scene.
Yeah.
That has ever been.
I mean, it was great. And then throughout the movie, you know, one of the things that's really interesting is this idea of Toxie being constantly villainized in the media, again, predicting the future because he's out there doing things that actively go against the what the politicians are trying to do in an attempt to make themselves rich. So the media is portraying him as a monster, even though these people that he is killing are awful human beings. So we get these really graphic like fight scenes where when he drops the weights on the drug dealer's head. Yeah, we get these really graphic death scenes interspliced with him helping an old lady carry her groceries across the street. You know,
and it's not just the helping the old lady. It's not just caring for the blind girl. The voice that he's given when he becomes Toxie, right? So there are two people involved in this, right? Because there is Mark Torgel, who plays Melvin, and then there's Mitch Cohen, who plays Toxie, right? Toxie's voice is not Melvin's voice, not even close. He's given this, like, the only thing that I can think of is like it's like a John Wayne voice, and it's not John Wayne at all because it's not, well, hello there, Pilgrim, but it's like this very heroic sounding voice. It's deeper, it's much more formal. Like Melvin was your very traditional nerd with a nerdy voice. Like he was a loser.
Yeah.
And here he is with this, well, ma'am, there's something that I have to tell you.
Well, and it's Kenneth Kessler does the voice, who's done a ton of Westerns. Like, so, I mean, it's a voice crafted for exactly what you managed to pick out hearing it, which you're right. It's that slow cowboy cadence, where everything is just deep and manly. And it's just part of his evolution once he gets coded in all of this stuff. It's so good. And it so takes you out of the moment for just a second the first time it happens, because you're like, oh, okay, that's obviously a crazy ass voiceover. But then it doesn't take long before you're just like, no, it's just Toxie's voice. Toxie. Like, it's just Toxie. Like, and that's how absurd all of this is the first time you're like, whoa, hey, okay. And then by the second, third time he talks, you're just like, yeah, okay, cool. I love it. Yeah, give it to Cigar Face. Let's go. So they do so much with this movie. Like I said, it's one of those things where if you're not into this and you're not a horror fan, it's probably ridiculously easy to shit on this. However, like us as fans of this genre, like I can't imagine anybody claiming to be a horror fan and having a single negative thing to say about Toxic Avenger. Like that's what's great about this, is when it's all packed in there. I honestly can't imagine if you are a horror fan, how, unless you're just so up your own ass that you're like, oh, well, this is great because it's cinema, movies are fun too, guy.
Yeah. And I think that is the only kind of horror fan that this wouldn't appeal to. Like if your idea of horror is well, you said it, A24, which by the way, this is not shitting on A24 because I love A24 movies. I am that guy, right? It is a film, right? Not a movie. But if your idea of horror is exclusively the elevated horror, right? To use that term that gets thrown around a lot, you're not going to enjoy this movie. And that's okay. There's different horses for different courses, but just know that we can't be friends.
Right. We can't talk about these things if that's who you are. So I mean, so we're ready to move forward here because we keep talking about some of these people, and ultimately Toxic Avenger is a character piece, right? It's about the people of Tromaville. So in a section we're calling Toxie, Slug, Bozo, what else you got? I mean, aside from ridiculous names, they are absurd characters. So take us through some of the people that we would find in the town of Tromaville.
Okay. So for me, the first person that I have to mention, like right off the bat, is Gary Schneider as Bozo. This is just like the most bad guy-iest bad guy that there ever was, and he's not even the main bad guy, right? But he's just so like, he's really getting on my nerves.
He's stressing me, Barbara.
That's it. He's stressing me, Barbara. Wow. I have to tell you, I didn't like his performance, but I did love his performance. This is exactly what the role of Bozo needed to be. And like, if I were writing this, I have to imagine that this was written for him. Like he was born to play this role, which is awful because I'm sure that Gary Schneider is a perfectly pleasant man.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah. It's like, have you ever seen Biff in what the fuck's his name from Back to the Future?
Yeah.
Perfectly pleasant man. Very funny, but born to play that role. He is just absolutely neurotic in a way that makes his character both scarier and also more appealing. It's weird because by comparison, Slug, who I think is the more even-keeled of the two,
right?
Slug seems almost more evil because he's more normal. But because of the way that Schneider plays Bozo, to me, it's almost like it's like the difference between Palpatine and Anakin, right?
Right.
Like, or not Anakin, but Vader, right? Because Vader is so like straight and narrow. Like this guy's like just there's no emotion here, and Palpatine is all into the theatrics, and so Vader seems more evil because Vader is like nonplussed constantly. There's something about Bozo, man. I don't know. Like this definitely says more about me than it does about Bozo or anyone else, but I can see myself getting sucked into Bozo's gravity.
Yeah.
There's a riz, as the chillin would say. There's a riz about him. Like there's something that just draws you to him, and it's like, nah, man, the fucking Melvin's stressing him out. Get Melvin the fuck out of here. What the hell, I've never wanted to hit someone with my car purposely. But I can kind of understand. Like the dude, he was stressed. He was just stressed out. How else is he supposed to get the stress out? Man, what a fantastic character! I can't imagine anyone else playing this role.
Yeah, like, and I love the dynamic between Bozo and Slug is so great. Like the dueling sit-ups while like trading the cigarette, just ripping cigs while you work out. Like that's about as 80s as it gets right there.
Yeah.
It's just like I love smoking, I love working out. Like, okay, we see you, Bozo. Calm down. Yeah, I did. I loved that whole little crew dynamic there. It was Wanda, Julie, Bozo, and Slug, right? They're so bizarre. It's so bizarre that one, like it's not hard to believe that these two psychopaths would be drawn to each other and that they would end up as friends. But then this bizarre idea that there are also two women out there that want to perfectly live this lifestyle with them and are turned on by their homoerotic and psychopathic tendencies. It's so strange, but it fits, right? Like you're like, these are the characters that Tromaville needs. And so, yeah, I love just that whole little crew. There was one really funny moment with either Wanda or Julie, I forget which one, where she's in the sauna and Slug comes in and he's like, he's doing like his Elephant Man bit, and then they have sex in the sauna. Then fast forward about 15 minutes, she's in the sauna, Toxie comes in, kills her. Yeah. What's really funny about that is they use the same scene of her the same footage of her walking into the sauna for both of those, but it only makes sense in one of them because she goes in with a handful of Polaroids that are then only there in the time when Toxie shows up to kill her, because she's like, getting off to looking through their murders, I suppose, because she's talking about how red everything is and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But it was just so fun because like the first one is the one with her boyfriend. I was like, wait, didn't she just have a handful of Polaroids? Like, where did those come from? And then later on you see them like, oh, okay, yeah, that's right. We reuse footage. That's good. That's good. That's a horror 101, right? So,
hey, we got that shot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We got that shot.
We'll fix it in post. We fix it in post.
I can see Lloyd Kaufman with just like this gigantic mountain of coke, like half of the $500,000 budget, which is nothing, right? Had to have gone to just straight cocaine.
Yeah.
Right. And he's just sitting in the back doing a line of coke. And he's like, we got it, right? We got it. Okay. All right.
I'll be in my trailer. Be in my trailer. All right. So I'm gonna go with the low-hanging fruit here. And I want to talk about Toxie. It's obviously his movie. And like we said, he really does get this good character arc where there is a lot more to him than his revenge storyline. And he manages to fall in love. It's in a plot device ripped straight out of The Mask, right? Where a blind girl falls in love with him, and even though she feels his face, she's like, "Oh, you're beautiful." All that stuff's fine. I want to take this opportunity to talk about how fucking good the special effects are for Toxie's face. Like if you're watching us live, he's glaring at you behind us here. Not only are the special effects incredible and making Toxie look not frightening, but bizarre, right? He's not scary. He's just super weird.
He's trippy.
Yeah, trippy. There we go. His eyes are unlevel and his ears and everything's wonky. But my favorite part about the way they did it was how long they made us wait to see his face. We had multiple scenes with Toxie where we're just hearing this Kessler voiceover and he's just wrecking these street thugs before we finally get a chance to see him.
In his tutu.
Yes, in his tutu. Yeah. And when we do finally get a chance to see him, again, we're not going to do a whole filmmaking section. It's a Troma film. But the shot that this still behind us is from is so perfect because the whole thing is how big his head is. And they take that moment and they just have his whole deformed face fill the screen. And, so I'm watching it on just, like my, 55, whatever inch TV. And I'm like, damn, like I can't imagine seeing that just taking up an entire movie screen. It was a genius shot. And so we end up with this guy who by the end doesn't he has that Frankenstein's monster moment where he just wants to be better. You know, he's learned, and he's fighting these urges, and he just wants to be happy with his girl in the garbage dump that he lives in. And why can't everybody just leave him alone? And so you just get this really funny and bizarre arc through him. He's also just amazingly strong. It's a fun character. And again, I completely understand why there was the idea to take this and turn it into a cartoon, because you tone down how like kind of graphically gross some of the special effects are from him being turned into toxic waste, and or turned because of toxic waste. And Toxie is a cartoon character. Like he has the mentality of a child with the strength of a silverback gorilla. And so it makes sense for them to eventually turn Toxie into an animated hero.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. He is, like I mentioned before, he is on the same level as Batman, as the Flash. I mentioned Dick Tracy just because of like the Rogues Gallery, you know. But really, who Toxie reminds me a lot of, and I'm sure it was a huge inspiration in the creation of this, is Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
And the backstory is so similar, where it's like, you know, he was forced into this situation where these toxic chemicals are poured on him, and he turns into, you know, this monster, except he's not a monster, and he's fighting for the betterment of mankind. I mean, that's pretty much just Swamp Thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love that, and I love that together with Sarah, he is portrayed as, like, all the physical shit aside, which
Yeah.
is part of what he was being made fun of. Like, he's just a good dude, and like that was inside of him all along. So it just brought out the ability for him to do all the things that he always wanted to do. So I love the way that this character is presented. The comic book fan in me will always love the Toxic Avenger for that, because in the end, that's what it is. I mean, he's Spider-Man, he's Swamp Thing, he's the little guy who fights for us because now he can. And I love that he's given that moment with Sarah, where it's like, you know, hey, even a guy like me, someone can love this mug, right? And Sarah's a fucking dime piece.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely.
She absolutely is. And I love that they didn't play up, you know, the, like, you know, oh, you know, there's another monster out there for him. It's like, no. She's just blind, so she can't see his face, right? But then you realize she's like, no, I don't give a fuck about that. I can tell you're ugly. That's not it. I'm in love with who you are on the inside. And that gives the average guys and the ugly guys and all the guys who feel like, hey, there's the, you know, no one will ever love me. It's like, nah, man, like, you got someone inside of yourself. Just be proud of that person. And there's someone for everyone out there. There's no need to be an incel. Just fucking don't. The fuck was that? Something just happened up there.
Yeah, I heard that.
You heard that, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Like, don't fight the other sex. Fight the stuff that's inside of you to become that better person. Because we see that in Toxie too, where he's like, I don't know who I'm becoming. It's like there's all this anger in me. And what does he do? He confides in someone that he trusts, and he talks it out. I fucking love that.
Yeah,
and
man.
that's so progressive. That's so ahead of its time. I don't know that Kaufman thought about that when he wrote that scene. But if I can try to be that that literary analyst for a second, it does kind of tell us something about what the Troma style of masculinity is.
Yeah.
Which is like, be vulnerable, be yourself. Don't be afraid to dig deep and figure out what is it that really makes me me. All he wants is to just live in peace. He's never had peace before.
Yeah.
And so when we finally see him stand up to that tank, and then Sarah comes out and stands right in front of him, like that's fucking awesome. That's a great character moment. It brings the whole arc full circle. I am, because I know myself, I am gonna go down this Troma rabbit hole, and I'm gonna watch all the Toxic Avengers. But you could end it here.
Yeah.
And it's perfect. Not perfect because it's technically perfect. The special effects in this movie are quite good, but this movie is not good objectively. It is just perfect because it's perfect.
Yeah. And I mean, and the other thing is, outside of the characters that we've talked about here, right? Everybody else is just kind of this throwaway caricature. You know, we've got Officer O'Shaughnessy or whatever, you know, who's just like, oh, stereotypical Jersey Irish cop. You know, you've got your bad guys who are just absurdly bad with knuckles and cigar face and all of that. It's really fun the way they kind of do that, where everybody else serves their purpose as a background character, but we get to focus on the kind of nucleus of this in Toxie and Sarah, and then the four, you know, hit and run specialists. And that's where we get to focus our attention. You know, we get his mom, who has the hilarious moment of, she hears him dying in the bathtub and just thinks he learned to jack off. You know,
like, oh, it's about time.
Yeah, you know, and she's happy for him, which great, very sex positive mom. I see you, love you, thank you, ma'am. And so, you know, but everybody else just kind of serves their purpose as being a backdrop to this world that Toxie lives in, and I think that it's important that they do it just the way that they did it, without ever really kind of chewing scenery. They make their presence known, and everything they do accentuates the other six that we've talked about. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're pretty good there on characters, you know. So this coming up next, you know, a lot of times we'll talk about filmmaking or, you know, different types of things, but we said that this is kicking off Troma Summer. And so we need to really look at the fact that this established a legacy. So in a section that I see sticking around for the summer, I mean, let's talk about the Tromosity of this movie. So when you go and you kind of chronologically look at the Troma catalog, this is the movie that became the blueprint for the things that happened after it. Before this, you had just kind of, you know, like goofballs, you know, teen sex romp style movies like Squeeze Play. And so going forward from this, Toxic Avenger kind of became what Troma films were going to strive to be. So, I mean, how do you think that this kind of pushed things forward for Troma?
I think that this is where it starts for Troma. Really, because I mean, it's not the first Troma film, but it is the first Troma film,
right?
Like this is where you can trace all of the Troma tropes back to this, starting with the fact, and I think that this is kind of what sets Troma aside from most of the other low budget horror movies that were being made in the 80s and the 90s, is and I mean, Troma's still going on, you know, so well into today. Low budget and not taking itself seriously, but not skimping on the entertainment. I think this goes back to the school of thought that Roger Corman had in the 60s and the 70s, the school of thought that Hammer had in the 50s, that like with a little bit of money, you can make something that is fantastic if your main goal is not necessarily to make to turn a profit, but just to make enough to make the next one.
Yeah.
We just want to keep making movies. And so you're making movies really for people to have fun when you do something like that. And that is so present. This seems like such a fun set to have been on. And clearly not a lot of it was actually done on a set because that costs money. A lot of this was done guerrilla style in like neighborhoods that Kaufman probably knew.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and
Just
so he was like,
places around Jersey.
yeah, he's like, can I just pop in here and film this thing? And they were like, yeah, don't worry, Lloyd, come in here and do this thing. I love that. It reminds me a lot of the early Sam Raimi movies,
Yeah.
where it's like this is objectively not good because it is low budget, but it is great because of the level of heart that's in this thing. And I think that needs to be there for Troma. I haven't seen all the Troma movies. In fact, you and I were going through this, and we are surprisingly like not very studied
Verse. Yeah.
in the Troma department. Um, I know that there's lots of Troma films that are misses, but I know that there's a lot of Troma films that are hits. And when you can manage to make something that simply wants to get me to put my ass in a chair and watch your movie for almost no money, dude, that's a win. And it starts here. You have a likable hero, you have outlandish villains. It takes place in a fantasy world, and I think that is one of the things that is consistent with Troma, is that this is not reality, and they're not attempting to present this as reality. There's something amazing about being sucked into a world that you know doesn't exist, because all of a sudden now I'm like, oh, okay, cool, so there's no rules,
Right.
and I'm just along for the ride here. It's like watching The Simpsons. I don't expect anyone to behave like a normal, rational person, kind of for the same reason as Tromaville, right? There's this nuclear reactor over here. There's all this toxic waste that's being dumped here, right? And so everyone is a cartoon character, and I fucking love that. So there is absolutely everything you need here. There's there's sex, there's violence, there's great special effects concerning the sex and the violence, and to top it all off, it feels like an old school movie. And there's something magical about that. When you can turn something on, you're like, man, that shit's old school. I fucking
Yeah.
love it.
You know, there's a word you used when you were talking there. You said heart. And I think that that's a lot of what this boils down to is it seems while you're watching the Toxic Avenger, it seems like they had complete and total buy-in amongst the cast and crew. That everybody was on the same page for how this movie was supposed to go. And if that's the case, I mean, that's just a testament to what Kaufman was doing and how, I mean, to get people to buy in, to find the right people to buy into something as ridiculous as this and turn it into what we got here is really something special. And as you watch, you know, Troma films, that always seems to be the thing, is whether or not these actors and are bought in to what they're doing. Like, are they doing the thing where they want to exist in Tromaville and they want to act like a citizen of Tromaville, or are they just trying to, you know, be the next big thing, and so they're hoping that somebody notices them because this was their first movie? What we get out of the Toxic Avenger is a cast that was like, okay, like you said, all right, so Tromaville, not a real place, right? So it doesn't matter what we do. You know, there are no repercussions here because we're not claiming that any of this is in any way possible or real. I mean, he builds a house out of trash in just like a day, just like carrying stuff around, and it's a sturdy structure. You know, like they don't make any effort to make this feel real. And everybody bought in so beautifully. and so perfectly to what they did. You know, the one that I always go back to, the Troma film that I have seen multiple times is Tromeo and Juliet. And it's that same type of thing. They knew how serious the source material was, but also knew how ridiculous the movie they were trying to make was. And it seems like everybody had so much fun making that. And again, we talk about this movie being the blueprint. After this, so much of what they released fell into this horror comedy subgenre.
Mhm.
But then they started branching out because they had name recognition. And why the fuck not? Like, we're Troma. We can do Shakespeare. I mean,
Right.
as we were looking down them today, we found a second one that we didn't know existed before today that's more Shakespeare because, yeah, why the hell not? Like, what do we have to lose? That's the other thing about Troma. It's not some name that's exalted where you're worried about damaging the legacy of Troma. Worst case scenario, you make a terrible Troma film and people just go, of course it's terrible. It's a Troma film. And that's it. And then they move on and nobody gives a shit anymore. Troma films are the horror movie definition of playing with house money. They have nothing to lose and they play like that all the time. And so as we look down that list and we saw stuff that we've heard of, that we've seen, that we want to do, I'm so excited about that concept of everything being a no holds barred, just all gas, no brakes movie, especially when compared to nowadays when we've got to you make a movie and then you show it to screeners and then you find out that, oh, well, China doesn't like this character and it goes against something and we're going to lose $1 billion if we can't show it in China, so we have to reshoot. Lloyd Kaufman don't give a shit who watches his movies. Not for a fucking second. He's making movies that he wants to see. China doesn't like it. He don't care. Susie up the street doesn't like it. Fuck her. What does he care? He's just making movies for the people who want to see these movies. And that's a lost art. You're talking about this feeling like an old school film. That's what it is.
Yeah.
There's no pandering in this movie. There's no reshoots for the censors or anything like that. Like, this is the type of movie that I bet John Waters gets hard about, right? Like,
yes.
Like, he watches this movie and he's like, this shit is sold. Like, I feel you when I watch this movie. And that's what that is. This movie has soul because it wasn't made to make money. It was made for the people who wanted to see this movie.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think there's only one thing left to do here, which is to rate this movie. Now, we didn't discuss a rating system.
We did not, but I've got a good one. I've got a good one. So, and as we talk about our rating system, we always like to give a quick reminder. We don't rate a movie against other movies. So yes, we've mentioned other Troma films, and hell, we've even mentioned Death Wish and Punisher and Dick Tracy, but we're not comparing the Toxic Avenger to any of those things. So in order to accurately rate a movie, rating it only against itself, we create a unique rating system for every movie that we do here on Shiver. So Dave, out of a possible 5 grotesquely deteriorating tutus.
Ooh.
What do you give? Yeah, that one's fun. What do you give the Toxic Avenger?
It feels odd to say this because part of me knows that it shouldn't be this, but how can this be anything less than 5 grotesquely deteriorating tutus?
Correct.
What is wrong with this movie? I have multiple times said throughout this show that it is objectively not a good movie.
Yeah.
And yet, there's not one negative quality that has been pointed out.
No.
There's lots of qualities that are like, it's a quality,
yeah.
But can I say
that's the thing they did?
Yeah. Yeah, he was stressed out. I fuck, this is perfect. This is exactly the movie that it needs to be. And not only is it exactly the movie it needs to be, it's exactly the movie I needed to be. It's exactly the movie you needed to be. Toxie is there for you.
Exactly. Yeah, you're 100% right. It's a unanimous 5 grossly deteriorating tutus on grotesquely deteriorating tutus on this one, because it just it does exactly what it set out to do. It didn't set out to give me nightmares and be the scariest thing I've ever seen. It didn't set out to win any awards or anything like that. They wanted to make this movie, like I keep saying, for the people who wanted to see this movie. And I mean, fast forward 40 years, and we've got the new Toxic Avenger coming out this August. But the thing was actually debuted 2 years ago. And then nobody would pick it up for distribution. They couldn't get it out into the world like like it deserved to be released. It took it 2 years of internet swell, of people like us saying, no, we want to see the Toxic Avenger. We need this. So not only is it just perfect for what it is, and like you said, it's perfect for what it needs to be, because this thing was the spark that lit the fire that has now become a household term in saying Troma film. Without the Toxic Avenger, we don't have the steps A through Z that it takes to make a Troma film. It not only was a shitload of fun to watch, but it is the prototype for so much that came after it. This is Toxie is the Helen of Troy of comedy horror films. That right there behind us is the face that launched 1,000 films right there, because it did everything right. And it's incredible for that. And on top of all of that, some of the little things that we didn't even get to mention, some of the great little like Mel Brooks style sight gags when they go into Sarah's house and she's got like 1,000 canes stacked right by her door and she grabs one and they all fall. I doubt that was even scripted, but it's so great that they kept it in there. Like, it was such a funny little just one-off gag. So many things like that that are just non-existent in films now. And so, yeah, absolutely unanimous 5 on this one.
So there you go. This is an absolutely perfect 5 out of 5 grotesquely deteriorating tutus. And I can't believe I remembered that.
Proud of you.
I'm proud of myself. Thank you. So to keep the Troma summer going, one of the things that Daniel and I discussed was like, well, do we want to plan this thing out? Do we want to say, all right, so, here's our schedule of Troma films, or do we want to take a page out of the Lloyd Kaufman book and kind of just wing it? Well, if you know anything about us, we're going to fucking wing it.
Hell yeah, we are.
Next week, which one was it, the Shakespeare one?
Yeah, we're gonna fast forward about 40 years, and we're gonna get a taste of modern Troma with the 2020 film Shakespeare Shitstorm, which is Troma taking on The Tempest. Literally, all we know about it is that, and we could not be more excited. This will be a first-time watch for both of us, and I would guess if you're listening and you want to watch to hear what we have to say about it, I'm assuming it'll be the first time most of y'all have seen it too.
Yeah, so I'm terribly excited about this. The Tempest is one of my absolute favorite Shakespeare stories. So this should be fun.
Yeah. So make sure you head over to shiverpod.com where you can find links to all of our social media outlets. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, all of those places at ShiverPod, where you can get updates on what we're going to be doing, what's going on, memes, things like that. Make sure you give us a follow. We're most active on Instagram. Also, if you're a big Troma fan and you're listening right now and you've got one that we need to see, we can Summer of Troma, Summer Fan Fest 3 can go hand in hand. We'd love to have you on. Send us a message.
Absolutely. So, on behalf of all of us here at Shiver, fright you very much.